Welcome to the Why Not podcast, where we explore new ways of living and learn new things. I'm Bowen, joined by my great friend Parsa, and today we'll be discussing our self-experiment investigating the effects of morning water consumption on our overall well-being and a range of other factors. We'll be discussing the science of water, its importance, and specifically, the importance of morning water consumption. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, and I pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging.
So hi, how are you?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Back to recording another episode.
Back to recording another episode. It's
Yeah.
Friday, Melbourne, cold weather,
Very
wearing
cold.
jacket. Yeah, it's nice. Let's dive into it then.
So
Let's talk about water.
That's
So about water and what is water? Why is it so important? And what's so special about drinking it in the morning specifically, which was what our experiment was about. So, well, we know water has a chemical structure of H2O, so made out of two hydrogen atoms and an oxygen atom. It's very, very essential. It's known as a macronutrient, so we need it on a daily basis in large amounts, large quantities. We'll talk about the requirements of daily water very soon. Well, we know that the body is made out of approximately 60 to 90% of water. The numbers somewhere between obviously differs between each individual. And what else do we know? We know that water makes up very important parts, such as it's involved with your lean muscles, involved with your bones, in your blood. It's with your urinary, your sweating, breathing, and basically every body functioning requires it. For a matter of fact, water is an input for cellular respiration, known as aerobic respiration, which is what drives the body to produce energy from glucose.
Let's talk about why drinking water in the morning is more important for our health than, let's say, drinking water throughout the day.
Well, in terms of its importance, well, it's like they're both kind of very important in a sense, but drinking water in the morning is a bit more special in a matter that your body is a lot more dehydrated throughout the night. Matter of fact, almost 100% of people wake up mildly dehydrated in the morning, and that's why your urine would be a bit more concentrated compared to what you would see during the day.
Yep.
And that's because sweating happens, perspiration or sweating, and also while you breathe, that also releases water. So your body is using water for digestion as well. All these are kind of making your body dehydrated.
Yes.
And so you wake up very dehydrated.
Yes.
And drinking a cup of water would really help to rehydrate yourself. Specifically, we know that digestion still occurs while you sleep. And when you drink water on an empty stomach, we know that the water absorption rate's significantly higher. So it can actually rehydrate you at a much faster rate than, for example, drinking water throughout the day.
That's right. And in my notes here, I've actually said that there is studies that have found that the body retains more water when a fixed amount of water is consumed over a long period of time, such as over several hours, than when you consume it in a very brief duration, such as minutes. This relates to what we did in our experiment because we started this experiment and we said, we want to have 1 week in which every morning we wake up, we would drink a standard cup, which is around 250 milliliters of water, straight after waking up. So we're talking within a minute. On our YouTube channel, we have a video that documents our progress in doing this.
So in our experiment, we did 6 days of controlled data, which was drinking water, just tracking our drinking water habits throughout the day. And then it continued to be a week of drinking water, 250 milliliters room temperature in the morning, right after waking up. And we looked at the averages of how it differed between the control week and the experimental week.
So we have a control week.
We do have a control week. And what else did we look at? We also looked at our weights.
Yes.
One of the main researches that we had a look at was the significance and the link between weight and waist circumference,
Yes.
BMI, and how it correlates with drinking water. I can get into the study. There was a study done by Hill sorry if I'm not pronouncing it right, done in 2024 April. So this is a very, very recent study, about 2 months old. And this took place in Korea with 172 Korean adults, 75 men and 97 women. They basically looked at the relationship between drinking water and weight loss,
Yes.
obesity to be more specific.
Okay.
Their measures of obesity included BMI and waist circumference. They've also looked at the timing of water. By timing of water, I mean when you drink water, for example, morning, before meals, during your meal, after meals, at night. We'll get into the results very shortly. They also looked at the temperature of water, so whether people drinking hot water, cold water, which one causes you to be more likely to drink water. And they found very interesting stuff actually. So this was quite surprising, but they actually found out that people who drank less than 2 glasses of water a day had a very big correlation with a lower BMI and lower circumference. And people who drank more than 8 cups a day, which is the recommended or daily water requirement per individual, for men it's slightly higher at 3.5 liters. And the people who actually drank more than 8 glasses were correlated with obesity, higher BMI, and higher waist circumference.
That's actually very surprising,
Yeah.
because I remember being told in school that maybe if you're hungry, you could just drink more water and that would make you feel more full,
Exactly.
and that would reduce your chances of being able to eat,
Exactly.
and hence overweight, obesity, etc.
Yeah, but these are very, very recent studies, and this is not the only study. There was also a study done on 8,000 Iranian participants, which also found a very similar trend, in which drinking less water was linked with lower weight and healthy individuals.
Do these studies have proposed a mechanism for why that drinking more water could, I mean, I'm not going to say lead to obesity, but is there a reason why there is an association there, or?
Very good question. Well, there's like, it's kind of like well known, like the satiety effect, where you drink more water and then you feel less hungry.
That's right.
That's actually how I felt like during the experiment. I felt like I was less hungrier in the morning as I would be if I drank water in the morning, as opposed to if I didn't drink water in the morning. I just feel hungry, so I would just eat breakfast right after working out. But that's kind of why it's interesting, because it kind of opposes that argument.
Yeah.
In terms of the mechanisms, they're not that well known.
Okay.
They definitely, I feel like more research is required in this area, given how important water is for our survival and living in general. But what else did I want to mention?
The temperature of the water, you mentioned that they took note of the temperature, whether
Yeah.
it was cold, lukewarm water.
Oh yeah, so there's, again, these areas are very great areas.
Yes.
With drinking cold water, we know that water has a heat capacity, and to bring that water to a similar level to our body temperature, it requires it to use energy. So when you drink cold water, your body is going to use energy to heat that water up so it can use it. So you would think that drinking colder water would burn more calories, which is true. However, again, drinking cold water was linked with higher BMI and higher waist circumference in this study. They couldn't bring any inconclusive evidence to support this. However, they also found that participants who preferred cold water drank more water.
Okay.
And drinking more water was linked with higher BMI and higher waist circumference.
Okay.
So they kind of went hand to hand in this case scenario. I would think they would need a better control. For example, doing group that with the same amount of water. So for example, 3 liters of cold water for one group, 3 liters of warm water for one group, rather than letting them decide how much they want to drink, what temperature they want to drink. That was my notes on Hills 2024.
It's also a fairly recent study.
It is a very fairly recent, and it was only 172 participants, so not that big.
Yeah. And with morning water consumption, I recall that it's actually overall an area that just lacks a bit of research because we couldn't find that many papers investigating specifically morning water
Morning
consumption.
water, yeah. We spent like long times on this to try and find a specific research on drinking water in the morning.
Yes.
Nada. Literally, it does not exist.
Or the ones that talk about, that propose the mechanisms for quicker gastric emptying. That paper that I found, I think was specifically to do with blood pressure and diabetes.
Yeah, hypertension, blood, diabetes.
So on general health, I think it's lacking a bit of research.
It does.
Yeah.
I definitely agree. And given the new research, on top of the Hills 2024 study and the Iranian study, there was also other studies which we'll get into shortly.
Okay.
That they also found out that they're basically questioning whether the daily requirement or daily recommended water intake is meant to be 8 cups of water. They're recommending much lower, given the fact that we underestimate how much water there is in our food and the fluids that we intake.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that lets us investigate or consider, I guess, the differences between pure water consumption, like drinking water out of a tap or somewhere, and the fluids that you have, like the juices, milk, soup that you consume.
Definitely.
They all have water in them.
They have very high contents of water.
Yeah.
For example, you bring up soup, most likely what percentage of would it be water?
I would imagine 70, 80%.
Yes. See, so 70-80% soup would be water primarily.
Yeah.
And if you imagine a serving of it, probably like 500 milliliters, there you go, like 300 of that is going to be water.
Yeah.
And you might not be counting that within your water intake.
Yeah.
So overall, we underestimate how much water there is in our food, in our fluids that we drink.
Does that mean that the people who drink more water, despite already having the intake from sources like milk and soup and juice, does that mean there could be other reasons related to disease that drive the extra water intake? Because I think I haven't Googled this recently, but I think based on my knowledge, if you're diabetic or pre-diabetic, a symptom of it is that you need to drink more water and you urinate more frequently.
That's right.
So could that be a possibility maybe?
Yeah, I haven't really looked into that much either. Well, what did you find the last time you searched it up?
Just from my memory, I think it's a symptom of diabetes to drink more. I mean, I don't want to go out diagnosing people who drink a lot of water. I drink a lot of water.
Maybe you have diabetes.
It's possible. I mean, I wouldn't know, but maybe in studies like these, the link between, being overweight and obese and a higher water intake, that could be
possible symptom. Yeah, I would think so. Not that expert on it, to be honest, but water is very essential for blood regulation. We know that. For hypertension, so blood regulation, high blood pressure. It's very important in regulating homeostasis and overall energy production. So it plays a pretty key role.
Virtually all biological processes. I mean, where would we be without water, right?
Yeah.
For this reason, we've decided to investigate for our experiment morning water consumption.
Yes.
So we can dive into that, what we did, why we did. So we obviously had a week of control in which we just started tracking how much water we drank in a day. We measured how much water our water bottles can have.
I actually have the data here. I can give us exact numbers of how much we drank during the control week.
Yep.
So I drank 1,967, just about 2 liters. A day on average, and you drank a shocking 3.8k, 3,800, just a bit under 4,000 milliliters.
3.8 liters of water a day.
Yeah.
And that's before
we started our experiment.
Yes.
Yep. So these are the control data. In our experimental data, I drank 2,200 milliliters of water a day, which was about a cup more than the control.
On average?
And for you, it increased by about 700 milliliters.
That's quite a lot.
4,700 milliliters.
That would mean I drank probably a bottle more water from
Yeah.
this experiment, which is more than that 1 cup.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yes.
For me, it was basically just the 1 cup that
Okay.
increased it. But
We'll talk about the reasons why later, maybe what we think.
what we think,
Yes.
okay. Why don't you just dive into it now? We can talk about it now.
Well, I think in my case, maybe having the water in the morning. I mean, the theory that we researched is that drinking water, a cup of it specifically in the morning, would help us rehydrate faster because of quicker gastric emptying, more of the water just being absorbed quicker.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's related to that reason. And again, it only happened to me. It could just be.
I thought I was I thought I was a bit more conscious of my water intake, so I was paying more attention to how much I was drinking.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say I changed it a bit too much, but perhaps I drank. More frequently grab my water bottle to take a sip or drink
Yes.
out of it.
Yes.
Perhaps, but then again, I didn't see much of a difference between the control and the experimental for myself. It was just basically the 250 mils that I drank extra in the morning.
I think your results would have been what I would have hypothesized for this experiment.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also possible that just as a result of all this tracking, I just became more mindful of water and I just maybe felt more thirsty as a result of me thinking, oh, like, I should be drinking some more water. I feel thirsty right now. I should just take a sip or 2 or 3.
Yeah.
So that's a possible reason why.
You do drink water quite a bit.
I do.
Like that is very, I encourage people to drink more water because with water you can overhydrate, but at the same time your body has mechanisms in place that if it feels like you've overhydrated, you'll just go to urinate, and that would get rid of most of the excess water in your body. Better be drinking at the upper limit than be risking dehydration.
I would say so as well. And when you drink too much water, I think a risk factor of that is hyponatremia, which means too low levels of sodium in your body, because, well, sodium draws fluids out of cells. So I suppose with more water, that just correlates with a lower level of sodium. We can talk about sodium as one of the factors, actually. That's one thing that I noticed.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Well, I was actually, while putting the research together for this, I looked at our trends between drinking water and our weights.
That's right.
Well, I can actually go into talk about what trends I found. So there was no particularly conclusive evidence of drinking more water equals higher weight or lower weight, perhaps because of our sample being just the two of us and the short span of time.
Yeah.
For me in particular though, yours was all over the place. But for me in particular, I saw during the 24th of June up until 27th of June, very, very similar trends between my weight and my water intake.
Okay.
The higher the water intake, the higher the weight. And this made me actually think, what if, given I ate more that day, higher sodium intake, higher thirst levels. Therefore, it led to me drinking more water, correlating with my higher weight.
But in that instance, the extra weight that you gain on that day would be as a result of just the increase in fluid and not necessarily things that we think of when we talk about weight, like your body composition of bones, muscles, fat.
Pretty much. Yeah, well, again, this takes back to the study that we just talked about where they found out that drinking more water is associated with higher BMI and higher waist circumference.
Yeah.
What they actually did though is, for instance, people who are obese or overweight, they require more water. We know this already.
Yes.
Because for their body to function, for them to hydrate properly, they require more water intake.
Yes.
So one point was that it's that these people, the sample with high BMI and high waist circumference, is what's driving them to drink more water, and hence drinking more water, higher BMI.
Yeah.
But this wasn't the case. With individuals who had normal BMI in the range of 19 to 24, and average waist circumference, they found out that within these group of participants, them drinking more water led to them gaining BMI, gaining weight, hence increased BMI, and an increase in waist circumference, which suggests gaining more fat. So it goes to say that the findings are a bit controversial, and the studies that I've looked at and we've researched, they don't particularly match from what we've heard since we've been growing up.
I think it could be possible that water intake could just be a reflection of dietary intake, because that's what I've noticed with my experimental period, is that I would drink more water when I eat more salty foods.
Yeah.
That was one trend I just noticed.
Right.
And in general, I drink water whenever I'm thirsty, and I'm obviously more thirsty whenever
you're having more salt.
Yeah, and that's like a very, for me that's a really strong correlation, and so maybe in that study that you talked about, it's possible that people's dietary decisions, such just having foods that are high in salt or whatever makes them thirsty, actually leads to more water intake. So it's not the water that's causing weight gain, because water doesn't have energy in it, but whatever other choices that you're making that determine how much water you're taking in led to those correlations that the study found.
Yeah, it's a very, very great area. Matter of fact, I'll talk about the literature review.
Yeah.
Literature review is a study where they look at all the recent studies and the previous studies and summarize it up. This was done by Armstrong and Johnson in 2018.
Yeah.
It titled Water Intake, Water Balance, and the Elusive Daily Water Requirements. And what they found was that the daily water requirements for children, men, women, and older adults, no empirical research provides definitive answers.
Yeah.
And no universal consensus exists. So this goes to show that how little research we have on the requirement of water, given how important it is. Isn't that shocking?
It really is. Yeah. Well, I suppose you do have to take into account factors like weight and age and sex, things like that. But yeah, the fact that there's no really even a universal guideline as to how much water you should. I think there are recommendations, but no definitive answer as to how much water you should be drinking. So, yeah, in general, I think it goes back to you should drink when you're thirsty, and your thirst is going to be determined by factors such as how much salt you're taking, or how much exercise you do, how much time you spend awake, things like that.
True. Yeah. But then the recommendations themselves, they are because you can't give it definitive, like you can't just be like, you drink 4 liters of water every day and you'll lose weight, or like you'll be fine, you'll be happy. You can't say that. But what the guidelines are currently is like 3.5 liters for men, and what we are questioning in these research papers is, are these recommended values accurate? Do we really need 3.5 liters of water every day, or are we fine just with 500 milliliters? Are we fine with 1 liter? These are what's being questioned. And I feel like it's just a very important area to be looking at.
I think that's true. Perhaps the reason why there isn't a lot of studies investigating, I guess, specifically water, could be that maybe the experts recognize water is just an outcome of other dietary choices that you make, but it's the dietary choices that actually determine things like weight more directly.
Possibly. Well, when it comes to, I guess, the link between obesity and water, that could play a very huge significant role.
Let's talk about the difference between water and fluids, though, in our experiment, because you mentioned my shockingly high levels of water intake, and that's just water. But in my diet, I know I also like to drink milk of sorts. I drink juices, have soup sometimes, and despite that, my water intake is still
very, very,
very high.
Well, it's not very high. I would say it's within the recommended area. So if anything, it's better than most people's. That means you keep very hydrated. Opposed to people who might not be drinking as much.
That's correct. What about you? Do you think, you said you mentioned you think that your water intake is below what's recommended,
Yes.
but how much of that maybe isn't accounted for things like milk and other things.
Exactly. No, I'm a huge light soy milk lover.
Just like me.
Yeah. I drink it every morning with my Wheat Bix. I mean, not drink it. I make a cereal bowl. That's just a bit. That's a bit maniac behavior to have Wheat Bix and then drink milk with it.
But we don't judge.
No, I don't do it. But I do drink milk quite a bit. Also, dairy products like yogurt, it also plays a very essential part.
That's right.
You have quite a bit of water in that as well. Don't drink much juices, but I do have 2 servings of fruits, sometimes even 3, which also have very high water content in them. For example, oranges or apples, they have very high water content too.
Yeah.
And these all have water in them. So I feel like if you were to add all these up, perhaps I'm within the recommended water.
I would guess so.
Water.
I think we are relatively well hydrated
Yeah.
people in general.
Yeah. I always have my water bottle with me, so if I feel thirsty, I'll just take a sip of it.
I do the exact same thing. We can talk about a study that we found that looked at adolescents' hydration patterns and how well hydrated they were based on the sources of water that they were taking in. And this study found that a drinking pattern based on water and milk was associated with better hydration, whereas a drinking pattern based on other drinks such as sodas, coffee, tea, sports drinks, and energy drinks were correlated with poorer hydration. And when I saw these results, I thought it was important to consider the possibility that maybe those second category of drinks, that's not water and milk, may have led to the inferior hydration as those people treat those drinks as a substitute for water.
Right.
I think that's something important to consider because for the population that are like us, carry a water bottle around, drink water whenever they're thirsty, I don't think water intake, whether it be high or low, is going to be that valuable of an indicator of health.
True.
Compared to things like diet. But for someone who maybe has a habit of drinking juice more frequently, I think that's going to make a bigger difference if they were to switch to water.
Definitely. I mean, there is juices, absolutely not. Juice, like it's because it has high sugar.
Yes. And sugar has a lot of energy.
And sugar has you do not want to be replacing water with juice,
which is a main contributor to going to be overweight.
Diabetes and all sorts of heart cardiovascular diseases.
Yes.
Speaking of sodas, for example, Coca-Cola is still very high in sugar, even the no sugar ones. I believe this study also looked at no sugar sodas, and it's still the same case. Waters hydrates so much better. And from the sodas, the water content is diluted, so the body will not be able to digest that as much and use the water as efficiently as it would to drink just pure water.
Yes. So for the advice that we've been hearing to just drink water, I think it's more applicable when it comes to making a dietary choice between, let's say, water and orange juice or Diet Coke or something like that. But if you're already drinking water and not necessarily the other things, I don't think drinking more water than what you're comfortable with is going to necessarily lead to better health outcomes.
True. No, I agree with that.
What
was there like anything in particular you noticed while you were on your experiment during the last 7 days?
Besides the very obvious increase in water consumption on top of the 250 mils we were instructed to drink, not really.
Did you notice any maybe you felt your mood improved, your mental performance increased, maybe a skin? Like, did you notice any better skin health? Because those are very well claimed.
To be honest, no. And I wasn't expecting much improvement just from changing water consumption habits. I will say though, even before the experiment, because my philosophy to drinking water, I guess, is just drink when you're thirsty. And sometimes I wake up in the morning thirsty. So if I have water in my water bottle, I would automatically drink it even before this experiment. And I know you weren't that big of a fan of this. Yeah. But when I did this, I even though I had a habit of drinking water before this experiment, I can pretty confidently say it wasn't 250 mils. If I were to guess, maybe 100, 150-ish, but not as much as a cup. So for this experiment, when I had the entire cup to drink in the morning, it felt a bit unnatural. But when I had actually the water consumed, I actually felt more refreshed. And I think I felt more motivated to take on my day. I was like, okay, like hydration is like ticked. Like I'm ready to start my day now.
Right, yeah.
That's not to say if I didn't do that, I'm going to be necessarily dehydrated.
Yeah, no, I get that. I mean, kind of same. For the audience listening, I must say, I wasn't used to drinking water right after waking up in particular. But after taking this experiment, which I would recommend to all the audience as well, because of all the benefits we just talked about. And I will actually keep drinking water. I'm going to keep my water bottle next to my bed and drink right after waking up, because I did feel some changes. However, 250 mils may be a bit difficult to start with if you're not used to drinking water right after waking up. Especially like I noticed in my first day, the 250 mils took like a minute to drink when I recorded it. But then like towards like day 5, day 6, like around 20 to 30 seconds to drink the whole thing. I mean, it sounds a bit weird because 250 mils, you're like, oh, just let me chug it now. But then after waking up, it doesn't feel right to be chugging 250 mils of water. So it might take some time getting used to, but give it a try.
I think when you consider the fact that when you're asleep at night, you're essentially undergoing an overnight fast, no food, no water. Right. It's a really special and unique physiological state to be in. So when you wake up, I would say undoubtedly you're dehydrated. Yeah. So just from that perspective, drinking water is probably a good thing rather than not. I've also heard advice though that, and I don't know many people who do this, but sprinkling a bit of sodium or salt in your water in the beginning
I've heard about that too.
because it's an electrolyte and you need that for energy. Yeah. So maybe that's something for us to try as well.
True. Adding maybe a bit of salt to our water, see how that, because we do lose electrolytes as well.
Yes.
That's something to talk about. We should talk about drinking water habits and behaviors that lead to these type of habits.
Okay.
I want to talk about the study because I found it quite relatable and interesting that they've done it. It's titled Understanding the Influence of Value, Reward, Self-Identity, and Early Life on Water Drinking Behavior.
Okay.
It was done by Roger and Pepys. Hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. What they found that drinking water out of obligation, so with effort, was associated with low and inconsistent water intake. So people who drank water out of obligation because they're like, oh, I have to, they're very low consistency and they found it very effortful to take it.
Yes.
Whereas participants who were self-conscious and they not necessarily cared more about their health, but very involved with their health, they found it more rewarding to be drinking water after doing something. So maybe right now I would be finding it rewarding to talk about this research.
Yeah. I think
So take a sip of it. But they also found out that drinking patterns from early life, such as your childhood, is almost very, very likely to take and carry on to your adulthood. So if you're a type of person to drink a lot of water in early ages of life, you're more likely to be the same person.
Yeah.
Carry on the same habits towards your adulthood.
And we're not just talking about the habit of drinking more water versus less water. It could be the habit of drinking water, obviously, compared to other drinks. Because we know kids love sugar.
Yes.
And kids probably love juices of all sorts. So having the habit of drinking just water instead of juices, from that developmental standpoint, would carry on.
Yeah. So that was very interesting. But just to say, it's possible to change and develop new habits. So if you're the type to not drink as much water, like don't even carry a water bottle or like don't even drink water. I know some family and friends that they don't even drink water. They dislike water. They rather tea and coffee than water. But if you want to switch and build a habit towards drinking water, I would say it's very doable. And it starts with getting a water bottle and filling it up with water and carrying it around, because that way it's very accessible, and whenever you feel thirsty, you just take a sip of it.
Definitely a good habit to have.
We'll be hitting like the kind of the 40-minute mark-ish. We should probably wrap up with going over some of the general water benefits.
Okay, so I have more notes here. The general benefits of drinking water include better skin. Obviously, as we know, dehydration can probably damage your skin, so rehydrating will overcome that negative effect. Better hair, as your hair is 25% water. A lack of water will make it dry and brittle and perhaps more likely to damage. Improving your metabolism, as we talked about earlier, water being an input of cellular respiration, prerequisite for creating energy really. A boosted immune system, as your lymphatic system, which transports all these immune cells in your body, require water to move them around, as water makes up blood plasma. So anything to do with circulation, transporting nutrients around your blood.
Definitely, very, very important.
Yep. The functioning of your whole body, to be honest, because
Honestly, yeah.
you have to transport not just nutrients, waste products that it produces. So when you consider all of these effects, water is just essential for your body.
Well, okay. I think like let's sum up what we've talked about by briefly going over. We could briefly mention an experiment again and talk about the effects of water and what we found in each research and the benefits of drinking water overall.
Okay. On top of what we already knew about the necessity of water in our lives, we found, perhaps very surprisingly, there is no universal guideline for how much water you should be drinking. There are recommendations, but there's no universal correct answer, so to speak. We know that drinking water first thing in the morning can be very important for rehydration over the overnight fast, due to quicker rates of gastric emptying. It's the rate of substances moving on from your stomach onwards, and most of the water that you consume in the morning is probably excreted and hinting towards better rehydration.
Yeah, that's right. In the researchers, we summarized research done in Korea, which they found that BMI and waist circumference were inversely related to water intake. So high water intake resulted in high BMI and waist circumference. Moving on to the research done by Roger and Pepys in 2022, they found that people who are more self-conscious and had self-conscious identities drank more water than people who felt obligated to drink water or drank it out of the necessity to or just for the thirst feeling.
Yep.
They also found that drinking during childhood, the habits carry on into adulthood. So children now who are more likely to drink water will carry on those habits into adulthood. In a literature review by Armstrong and Johnson, like you just mentioned, they found that there is no definitive recommended amount of water or any research that suggests how much we should actually drink. And the overall benefits of drinking water in the morning, which in the morning specifically, excuse the interruption. So I was saying the overall benefits of drinking water in the morning, which includes reduced calorie intake, because there's a satiety effect of you feeling full after ingesting water in the morning. There is obviously eliminates toxin. It'll rehydrate you, get rid of the toxin, which will be urinated out or defecated, and enhance mental performance and better skin health overall. The very well claimed and well known benefits of water.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the end of our experiments and our research breakdown and going through the very groundbreaking research that we've summarized and found on this topic.
So we should probably give an update about our upcoming video, which is going to include us learning a skill of some sort, which we will not disclose at the time of releasing this episode. That'll be out next week, and the podcast for that will be out the following week, followed by the next experiment that we will do. Yes.
Well, thank you guys for listening. All the literature that we've reviewed today and all the websites used as resources will be all referenced and put in the description below. And we understand this podcast had some great areas in it, such as requirements, water requirements, and daily intakes. We did our best to find out papers that exactly looked at this. So if you have any primary research papers that discuss this, please put it down in the comment sections. We would love to have a read at it because we could not find any on this particular topic. That being said, again, thank you guys for listening throughout our podcast. Make sure to give us a follow on Spotify. If you're listening on YouTube, please subscribe and watch the video that came out last week. That has some very, very good insight. And thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Where the hydrogen atoms are the tip of your finger, and you can imagine the hydrogen. What? This felt like so copyrighted.